I want to introduce this clip I'm going to play by a pastor who has made a claim that the NIV and many other modern translations have left out the phrase "through his blood" in Ephesians 1:7. Here I have eSword open, and I have the English Standard Version, the King James Version, which is, he is a King James Version only pastor, okay? American Standard Version, this literal translation of the Holy Bible, the SEV, all these have like "through his blood," with the exception of this right here, this Contemporary English Version. It uses blood, okay, in here, like Christ sacrifices his life's blood to set us free. And then American Standard Version here as well, and then this International Standard Version. All of them says "through his blood." The one that he really speak against would be the NIV, so let's bring up that as well. And I don't know how well you can see this, but I guess I could enlarge. Hopefully. I don't even know if I can or not. So I was hoping I could. Maybe I need to try a different way to enlarge it. Okay, that's huge, and that's probably huge enough. Oh, that's not going to work. Let's go down some here. You can even see the verse. Okay, so now that's probably too small. So let's try it again, not to be so zealous. I do want you to see this in the NIV, since this is the one that's in question or mentioned in the clip, the specific version. But however, and you see "through his blood" here is in the NIV. You can see the copyright version for this particular one, and also my phone app, I use YouVersion. They have the same publisher, okay, the same publisher here as this gateway.com, BibleGateway.com, okay? So let's play the clip. I will try to, as the clip is playing, probably show the eSword versions better. You may not be able to read this. It may be so small on the video. I don't know what it's going to look like on the video, but I hope that.
Notice verse number 7. In whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins, according to the riches of his grace. When I read that, I left something out. What did I leave out? I want to make sure you're paying attention. What did I leave out? All right, so I left out "through his blood." I wonder, do you think "through his blood" is important? I mean, if you think "through his blood" is important. All right, well then why do so many people hold to the NIV and many other modern translations, which leaves "in his blood" out? And what you'll find in the NIV and most, if not all, modern translations is "in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins." Hey, I'm sticking with my King James Bible. It's only through his blood that we are saved. You say, well, I can't understand the King James Bible. I'm trying to be kind. I'm going to read something. In whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins, according to the riches of his grace. What's so hard to understand about that? What's so hard to understand about that? This book has been around for a long time. And by the way, it's going to stay around for a long time. You know what you do? You pray and ask God to give you understanding of his word. And God will give you understanding of his word. I think I'd rather have all of it. By the way, I can understand it. If there's a word you can't understand, look it up. You understand what I'm saying? Look it up. Hey, you say, preacher, you one of those King James only? Yes, sir. I'm King James only. I'm going to stick with something that has all the words in it. In whom we have redemption through his blood. Thank God for the blood of Christ. The forgiveness of sins according to the riches of his
Okay,
grace.
I'd like to make a few more points or a couple more comments as I close this video out. And please forgive me if you hear any background noise, because I do have 3 children that are hanging out with me this afternoon. So he makes a comment saying, like, why so many hold to the NIV and other modern translations? I'm thinking probably pretty much for the same reason. When King James Version Bible came about in 1611, the same reason why people was using the KJV, for the same reason as people will be holding to other modern translations. Now, I am not an advocate or a person that uses the NIV. I was actually looking for my NIV. I had received one from my first sergeant when I was in the military, and I can't find it for some odd reason, so I'm thinking I must have it put away somewhere, because I wanted to see in that particular version if it left that phrase out, because I was really curious on that. Also, too, he said that the other translations use forgiveness of sins, and actually, if you notice, even in the ones that I showed, that it showed forgiveness of trespasses. So the NIV did say forgiveness of sins, but the ESV, NASB, and all the other ones that I had showed up there, they show forgiveness of trespasses. So some people may object from the King James Version. Well, he at least thinks, because people would say to him, I can't understand that Bible, because the words are kind of like hard to understand, or different things like that. Now, I am in agreement. Most definitely, we need to pray and ask God for understanding, and not just understanding of what the words mean, but what the author is intended when he wrote different passages. So not just what definitions of words are, but actually what is the author trying to convey in his letter that he wrote. And so he says, now the King James, it has been around a long time, but we're talking about since 1611. So prior to 1611, there were other translations used, like the Wycliffe, Geneva Bible, I think, was very popular during that time as well. And and even the King James translators would not hold to KJV only. They just wouldn't do it. And you can look at the preface in the King James to even come to that conclusion. And he said, and then just to comment on the last part about and one last point, just to kind of mention, he says that, well, the last two kind of go together. I think I'd rather have all of it. And also, he's going to stick with something that has all the words in it. So he's having an assumption that the King James has all of it. And I'm assuming he's talking about all of God's words, with nothing taken out of it. But that's the thing. The Bible, the Old Testament Hebrew, the New Testament Greek, and during the time of the disciples, or actually the first, I guess we can say the first century, the Old Testament Hebrew was translated into Greek, which is what we call the Septuagint, okay? And that's what the disciples would have been reading too, which would have been a Greek text of the Old Testament text, or Hebrew text. So now we're talking about King James, we're talking about 400 and about 5 years versus 2,000 years that the church has been around. And then prior to that, the Old Testament, because really King James Version has more to do with the New Testament than it does the Old Testament, okay? It's really the New Testament that becomes more in question, because that's where the TR, or the Texas Receptus, for the King James would have been used, is New Testament, not Old Testament. So that's more the controversy is around the New Testament parts of Scripture, not really the Old Testament parts of Scripture. So, but like I was saying about him assuming that the King James has everything and that other translations is leaving things out. In this particular example, verse Ephesians 1:7, you notice they didn't per se leave it out. I don't know if I want to even use that term. When you have, when there's a textual variance between different translations, not just the translations, it's really dealing with the, whether it's the Byzantine text or a collection of manuscripts, I guess would probably be better said. The variances between manuscripts on a particular, any given verse, you know, it's just, you're going to have some of that variance. And in this case, we don't really have much of a variance that he's making an argument with Ephesians 1:7, but there are. So I'm not trying to deny that there aren't any issue or areas where seemingly there's some things been omitted. And I don't want to use the term. I do want to use the term or to emphasize seemingly some things have been omitted, but not really. Okay, it's just in the manuscript. Not all manuscripts have all of the and there's all of some things left out or added or changed and different things like that. There are other verses that are way more controversial than the first chapter, verse 7 of Ephesians. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I hope this was just helpful. And the reason for me doing this is more around just the fact of, just because a man stands in a pulpit and telling you something, you still need to verify it yourself. You need to check it out for yourself. And most of the time we won't do that. Sometimes it's because we already believe what the man is saying, or we could be lazy and not wanting to verify or check exactly what he's saying. So here, this most definitely is one where he has been misled. His information that he was giving to create when he was making a sermon does not work. Okay, it's not good information. So he's got bad information, and he's passed on bad information to his congregation as well. So just beware of those kind of things. People be speaking with such confidence about stuff, and they sometimes are not telling you the truth. So just do our due diligence. Be like the more noble, like the Bereans, and check to see if those things he say is true. Okay. Thanks for watching.